Scarlett Reynolds was standing in front of the mirror in a department store fitting room, adjusting the pleat of her white satin dress. There were only 3 days left until the wedding, and she still couldn't find the right shoes. The seventh pair she tried on that day seemed almost perfect, elegant ivory court shoes with a medium heel, but she wasn't completely sure of her choice. The 25-year-old was used to making decisions on her own. Having been in foster care, she had been living in her own one-bedroom apartment provided by a state housing program since she turned 18. She worked as a project manager at a construction firm, earning enough to never deny herself anything. And now, marriage. Bennett Ashford, a 32-year-old civil engineer, had won her heart half a year ago at a company holiday party. Tall, well-dressed, with a friendly smile and attentive brown eyes, he had courted her in a truly romantic way. There were flowers every week, candlelight dinners, and long walks along the waterfront promenade. Bennett introduced her to his mother after only 1 month of dating, and 2 months later, he proposed to her right on the beach during a trip to Miami, Florida. Margaret Ashford, a woman of 55 with a modern haircut and always flawless makeup, received her future daughter-in-law quite warmly. Margaret worked as a registered nurse at the county health clinic and had been widowed 5 years prior. She lived with her son in a spacious 2-story house in the Atlanta suburbs, so she happily agreed when Bennett suggested the newlyweds move in with her after the wedding. "Mom's house is huge, Scarlett. There's enough room for all of us," he convinced her during a family dinner a month ago, "and we can rent out your apartment." Scarlett didn't object. At the time, she thought her mother-in-law's presence would help create a true family atmosphere, something she had missed so much during her childhood. Now, standing in the fitting room, she mentally went over all the details of the upcoming ceremony. The dress was bought, the rings were engraved, and the venue was reserved. There would be few guests, some of Scarlett's colleagues, Bennett's friends, his mother, and his uncle. Scarlett herself had no family, and this sometimes saddened her, especially during important moments like these. The young woman took off the shoes and carefully hung the dress on the hanger. She needed to make a final decision: buy these court shoes or look for others. Voices drifted from the neighboring fitting room. Apparently, new customers had come in. Scarlett wouldn't have paid attention, but one of the voices sounded familiar. "Are you sure the plan will work just like before?" It was a woman's voice, a little raspy, exactly like her future mother-in-law's. "Absolutely," a man with a deep baritone replied. "We've done this 2 times already. The documents are ready. The certificate of mental incompetence can be signed at any time." Scarlett froze. The woman's voice was indeed Margaret's, but what were they talking about? Scarlett automatically started recording the conversation on her phone. "You're sure she won't figure it out?" the woman continued. "My son and I just need her apartment and her money, and her to the funny farm, just like we agreed." Scarlett's blood ran cold. This was definitely her mother-in-law, and they were talking about her. The young woman leaned against the fitting room wall, trying not to breathe. "Bennett, does he remember his role?" the man asked. "Of course, my son is an excellent actor. After the wedding, he'll gradually start slipping medication into her food. In a month or 2, she'll start having hallucinations and inappropriate behavior. Then we'll call an ambulance, and with the apartment paperwork, Bennett is already building her trust. After the wedding is official, it'll be easy to get a power of attorney for property management, supposedly to rent out the apartment. And once we have that, we're all set." Scarlett felt the ground drop out of her feet. It turned out that all his love, all the romantic courtship, was a pure deception. Bennett and his mother planned to take over her apartment and lock her up in a psychiatric hospital. "Theodore, what if she suspects something?" Margaret's voice held a note of worry. "She won't suspect anything," the man replied confidently. "She's an orphan. She has no one. There will be no one to speak up for her or ask uncomfortable questions. And I'll choose the drugs so she won't even understand what's happening to her. She'll think she's having a nervous breakdown from the stress of the wedding." They fell silent, and Scarlett heard the rustling of papers. They were evidently flipping through something. Her heart was beating so loud she could hear it in her ears. "All right, I'll see you tomorrow night at my office. We'll discuss the final details." "Okay, I have to go now. Bennett is waiting for me at home." She heard footsteps. Then the fitting room door closed. Scarlett was left alone, still unable to believe what she had heard. Her hands shook as she put her clothes back on. Thoughts raced through her head. What should she do? How should she act? Such a monstrous story was hard to believe, but she recognized her mother-in-law's voice and the name of her future bride-to-be without fail. Now, many details of their relationship formed a terrifying picture. Bennett had proposed marriage very quickly. He had been very insistent about her financial situation, her apartment, and the presence of relatives. When he found out she was an orphan, he had even seemed pleased. "It means no one will interfere with our family life," he said. Scarlett left the fitting room on shaky legs. She didn't buy the shoes now. That seemed utterly unimportant. The main thing was to figure out what to do next. Should she cancel the wedding? But then they would know she knew everything. And what if she was wrong and it was just a very similar voice? No, she was not wrong, and now she had 3 days to figure out how to protect herself from these scammers. 3 days to turn from victim into hunter. As she left the mall, Scarlett unexpectedly smiled. It was a cold, determined smile. They would get her apartment, but not the way they planned. That same evening, Scarlett sat in her kitchen, pretending to read a bridal magazine. In reality, all her thoughts were consumed by the conversation she had overheard. Bennett had gone to a friend's house to discuss the bachelor party, leaving her time to think quietly. She tried to recall everything she knew about her fiancé. They had met at a corporate party for the construction company where Scarlett worked. Bennett was there as a representative for a contracting firm. Tall, attractive, perfectly dressed, he immediately caught her attention. And the way he courted her, bouquets of roses, expensive restaurants, gifts. Now she understood where a middle-aged engineer got such resources. If he was truly engaged in scams, the money from previous victims could easily have paid for his lavish gestures. Scarlett opened her laptop and started searching the internet. Bennett Ashford was too general a search, yielding hundreds of results. She tried adding the city name, his profession. Nothing suspicious. His social media page looked completely normal. Pictures from work, with friends, and their joint photos from the last few months. But a real con artist wouldn't expose himself on the internet. She tried searching for information on Margaret, a nurse at the county health clinic. That would be easy to verify. Tomorrow, she would call there under some pretext. In the meantime, she needed to remember the man's name, Theodore. Her mother-in-law had called him by name, so they had known each other for a long time. And from the conversation, he was a psychiatrist, likely holding a high position. Scarlett typed Theodore Psychiatrist Atlanta into the search engine. The third link took her to the county psychiatric hospital's website, Chief of Psychiatry, Dr. Theodore Whitmore, MD, a highly respected physician with 20 years of experience. The photo on the site showed a man in his 50s with a receding hairline and watchful eyes behind thin, silver-rimmed glasses. Scarlett stared at his face, trying to memorize every feature. This man was planning to lock her up in a mental institution. She delved into the doctor's background. He had graduated from medical school, completed his residency, and published numerous academic papers. At first glance, he was a respectable doctor with an impeccable reputation. But if what she had heard was true, he had already pulled similar tricks 2 times. The lock clicked on the apartment door. Bennett was back. Scarlett quickly closed all the browser tabs and picked up the magazine again. "Hello, darling." Bennett kissed her cheek and sat next to her on the sofa. "How was your day? Find any shoes?" "Not yet," Scarlett replied intently, studying his face. "I'll look some more tomorrow." "Don't worry, you'll definitely find them." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "The most important thing is that you're happy on our big day." What an excellent actor! If she didn't know the truth, she might believe the sincerity of every word. Scarlett tried to smile naturally. "Bennett, tell me about your mom. I know so little about her." "Tell you what," he shrugged. "She's a normal woman. She worked as a nurse her whole life. She raised me alone after my dad died. She never remarried. She always said I was the most important thing in her life. She has friends, colleagues." Bennett looked at her in surprise. "Why are you so interested? Those are strange questions." "Just curious. We're going to be family soon. I want to know more about your loved ones." "Well," he mused, "she has a few friends from work. She also talks to some doctors sometimes. A doctor used to visit us often when I still lived at home. Theodore, I think." Scarlett's heart skipped a beat.
So they really were longtime acquaintances. What does he do? A psychiatrist. Mom said he's a really good specialist. Scarlett nodded, pretending the information wasn't especially interesting to her. Bennett, did you have any serious relationships before? Now he genuinely looked at her with wide eyes. Scarlett, what's wrong with you today? You're acting so strange. We already discussed all of this. We discussed it, but not in detail. I just want to know what experience you're bringing to our marriage. Yes, I had relationships, of course, but nothing serious. You're the first person I'm willing to commit my life to. And Margaret, did she approve of your previous girlfriends? Scarlett, stop it. He turned around, and his voice was laced with irritation. What is this, an interrogation? Maybe you should tell me about your exes. I'm sorry. She stood up and walked to him. It's probably just pre-wedding jitters. I'm just worried about how your mom will receive me. Bennett hugged her and kissed her forehead. Silly girl. Mom adores you. She constantly says how wonderful you are, how lucky we are with the... He stopped, realizing he had said too much. I mean how lucky I am to have you, he quickly corrected himself. But Scarlett already understood everything, so her mother-in-law was truly interested in her apartment, and it wasn't just a casual thought, but intentional interest.
The rest of the evening proceeded as normal. They watched a movie and discussed the final wedding preparations. Scarlett constantly felt her fiancé's probing gaze on her. Her questions had apparently alarmed him. When Bennett finally fell asleep, she lay awake for a long time with her eyes open, thinking about her plan of action. She needed to gather evidence in a way that the scammers wouldn't suspect anything. She had 2 days before the wedding, 48 hours to turn the hunters into the hunted. First, tomorrow she would find a way to contact a private investigator. Such matters are best entrusted to a professional. In the meantime, she needed to play the role of the devoted fiancé without giving the slightest cause for suspicion. Scarlett quietly got out of bed and approached the window. The nighttime city blinked with lights. A train whistle sounded somewhere in the distance. Tomorrow, her own game of cat and mouse would begin. The next morning, Scarlett woke up in her apartment before Bennett. While he was in the shower, she quickly found several detective agencies in the city online. She chose one that specialized in family investigations, Fact Detective Agency. Jasper Cole speaking, a man's voice answered when she dialed the number. Good morning. I need help with a very delicate matter. Can we meet today? It's better to discuss these things in person. Yes, of course. What time works for you? Would 2 in the afternoon be convenient? I'll text you the address. Scarlett agreed and hung up just as Bennett came out of the bathroom. Who were you talking to? He asked, drying his hair with a towel. The hairstylist. I made an appointment for tomorrow. She lied without hesitation. Good. I'm meeting Mom today. We'll discuss the final details of the reception. Can I come with you? Scarlett suggested. I'd like to be involved in the preparation. No need, he quickly replied. We have boring organizational stuff. You focus on yourself. The bride's beauty is the most important. Another red flag. Why didn't her fiancé want to take her to the meeting with his mother? They always met as a threesome before. After breakfast, Bennett left for work and Scarlett was left alone. The first thing she did was call the county health clinic. Excuse me, does Nurse Margaret Ashford work with you? She asked, changing her voice slightly. Yes, she does. Who's asking? I'm her niece. I wanted to drop something off for her at work. She's here until noon today. Admissions department, 2nd floor. So, her mother-in-law really was a nurse, but this still didn't prove her involvement in the scam, though it certainly gave her a reason to know the psychiatrist. At 1:30 in the afternoon, Scarlett arrived at the detective agency's address, a small office on the 3rd floor of an office building, a modest plaque on the door. Jasper Cole turned out to be a charming man with gray eyes, about 45 years old, and a sturdy build. Have a seat, he motioned to the chair across from his desk. Tell me what's going on. Scarlett laid out the entire situation in detail, from meeting Bennett to the conversation she'd overheard yesterday. The detective listened attentively, making notes of important details.
It's a startling story, of course, but not unique. Real estate fraud through forced hospitalization is a known scheme. Does that mean such a thing is actually possible? Unfortunately, yes, especially if the victim is alone and the fraudsters have connections in medical institutions. Jasper leaned back in his chair. The question is, how do we prove it? What do you propose? We need to check the past of your fiancé and his mother. If they are truly engaged in such a business, there must be traces. We also need to find out the connection between Whitmore and the Ashfords. How long will that take? With intense work, a day or two. But there's a problem. Your wedding is tomorrow. If we only find evidence after the marriage is official, it will be harder to annul. Scarlett considered this. Of course, she could postpone the wedding on some pretext, but then the scammers might suspect something is wrong and disappear, making it even harder to prove their guilt. No, the wedding will happen, but by then we must have ironclad proof. Risky, the detective shook his head, but effective. Imagine they think the plan worked. They relax, and then boom, all their crimes come to light. Jasper smiled. I like your approach. All right, we'll work on an emergency basis, but I'll need your help. What kind? I need to get inside the Ashfords' house, take a look around, maybe find documents, compromising materials. It's possible if you can get them out of the house for 3 or 4 hours. For example, send them somewhere for wedding errands. Scarlett thought about it. Tomorrow morning, she was scheduled to see the hair and makeup artists. Her alibi was ready, and Bennett and his mother could be sent out for some last-minute shopping. I think I can arrange it, she said. Excellent. Then here is my plan.
Over the next hour, they discussed the details of the operation. Jasper explained exactly what to look for in the house, how not to leave traces of entry, and how to communicate in case of an emergency. And one more thing, he said finally. Be careful. If these people really are involved in what you overheard, they won't stop at anything to protect themselves. I understand, Scarlett nodded. What about payment? After the case is closed, if we prove their guilt, I'll take the standard fee. If not, I work for free. This approach inspired confidence. Scarlett shook the detective's hand, gave him the key to her mother-in-law's house that Bennett had given her as his future wife, and headed home. On the way, she stopped at an electronics store and bought a cheap burner phone to communicate with Jasper. Her main number could be intercepted if the scammers were truly professionals. At home, Bennett was waiting for her with a bouquet of white roses. How are things, gorgeous? He kissed her and handed her the flowers. I missed you. Thank you. They're beautiful. Scarlett smelled the roses. How was the meeting with your mom? Everything's discussed. Tomorrow will be an unforgettable day. Bennett, can I ask you a favor? Tomorrow morning, I need to go to the makeup and hairstylists, and I'd like you and your mom to pick up the cake. It's so symbolic. Mother and son preparing for the wedding. She can check and evaluate the quality and look of the cake. Of course, darling. What time should we pick it up? At 11 in the morning. And maybe you could pick up some champagne on the way. The one we ordered might not arrive on time. Great idea. Mom and I will handle everything. Don't worry. Perfect. So tomorrow morning, the detective would have several hours to search the house. In the meantime, she needed to continue playing the part of the loving fiancé. The evening passed quietly. They watched a comedy on TV. Bennett told funny stories from his life. Scarlett smiled and laughed in all the right places. But inside, everything was churning with disgust. How could he fake it so skillfully? Was she nothing more than a walking bank account to him? Before bed, Bennett hugged her especially tenderly. Tomorrow you'll become my wife, he whispered in her ear. I'm so looking forward to this. Me too, Scarlett replied, wondering how much longer this torture would last. She couldn't sleep for a long time that night, going over tomorrow's plan in her head. Everything had to go perfectly. She would have only one chance to expose the scammers, and she couldn't waste it. On the morning of the wedding day, Scarlett woke up in her apartment with a firm resolve to see the matter through to the end. Bennett was already bustling in the kitchen, making breakfast. Good morning, gorgeous, he smiled broadly. Did you sleep well? Perfectly, she lied. In reality, the night had been restless, full of anxious dreams.
Mom already called. She's asking what time we're going to get the cake. I told you at 11, Redwood Street Bakery, number 15. Got it. And what time are you going for your manicure? At 10:30, then to the hairstylist. I think I'll be back around 3. Excellent. We'll have everything organized by the time you get back. After breakfast, Bennett left. Scarlett was left alone and immediately dialed the detective's number. Jasper, the plan is in motion. They're leaving for the cake at 11 in the morning, then for champagne. You'll have about 3 or 4 hours. Understood. The Ashfords' address was given to me yesterday. I'm starting the preparations. What about the background check? I'm working on it. There's already interesting information. Bennett Ashford has had 2 recorded marriages in the last 5 years. Scarlett felt a chill run down her spine. 2 marriages? But he said she was the first. First wife, Audrey Patterson, 30 years old. She was a widow before marrying him. She owned a 2-bedroom condo downtown. Divorce, declared mentally incompetent. Second wife, Eleanor Vance, 28 years old. Marriage dissolved 1 year after her first divorce due to the spouse's mental incompetence. And what happened to them? Audrey Patterson has been in the county psychiatric hospital for 4 years. Diagnosis: schizophrenia. Declared legally incompetent. Eleanor Vance is in the same hospital, same diagnosis. Both were stripped of ownership rights to their condos. Her hands trembled. My God, does that mean they already have victims? It seems so, and the most interesting thing is that the attending physician for both women is Dr. Tedawar Whitemore. We have to save them. First, we need to prove what they did to them. For that, we need documents, recordings, any material evidence of the connection between the Ashfords and Whitemore. So, getting into their house is even more important. I agree. Be careful and stay in touch. Scarlett hung up and tried to calm herself. So, her suspicions were confirmed, and even worse than she thought. These criminals already had victims. 2 women now rotting in a mental institution because of them. At 10:30 a.m., she left her apartment, supposedly heading to the esthetician and manicurist. In reality, she visited the beauty salon for 30 minutes. She got the simplest and fastest manicure to maintain her alibi. Then she drove to the house where Bennett's mother lived to make sure they had truly left. Their 2-story house was in an older neighborhood of Atlanta. Scarlett parked some distance away and waited. At 10:59, Bennett and Margaret left the house, got in their car, and drove away. A few minutes later, Scarlett sent a message to the detective. Clear road.
Now all she had to do was wait. She went to another beauty salon where she had a hair appointment. While the stylist worked on her wedding updo, Scarlett wondered what Jasper would find. The bride is a little tense today, the stylist noted. It's understandable, of course, but try to relax. Stress makes your facial muscles tight. Your makeup won't look smooth. I'm just nervous, Scarlett replied. It's such a big day. I get it. Is the groom a good guy? He seemed like a good guy, Scarlett answered honestly. At 2 in the afternoon, the detective called her. We need to meet. Urgent. I found something. It's better if I show you in person. Where are you now? At the salon on Liberty Avenue. There's a Central Perk cafe across the street. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Scarlett quickly paid the stylists and hurried out of the salon. Her heart was pounding. From the detective's voice, she could tell the news was serious. Jasper was already waiting for her in a secluded corner of the cafe. In front of him, on the table, lay a small file folder. What did you manage to find? Scarlett asked, sitting down opposite him. More than I expected. He pulled documents out of the folder. Your fiancé keeps detailed accounting of his projects. The detective opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. Here is the file for Audrey Patterson, the first wife, a detailed plan of the operation. Meeting, courtship, wedding, gradual poisoning with psychotropic drugs. Scarlett looked through the documents, feeling dizzy from what she saw. Everything was described day by day: when to administer the drugs, how to simulate symptoms of mental illness, when to call the doctors. And this is for the second wife. Jasper showed another folder, an analogous scheme, only they changed the tactics slightly after a review of mistakes. What mistakes?
Audrey turned out to be too suspicious. She started asking neighbors about her husband's behavior. They had to rush the process and not give her time to investigate. And what about Eleanor? They worked more carefully with her. They isolated her from friends and colleagues, convincing her to change jobs. By the time she was admitted to the hospital, she virtually had no social connections. Scarlett flipped the page and saw her own photograph. And they already had an open file on me, a complete folder. They studied you very carefully. Financial status, family connections, or rather the lack thereof, social circle. The folder contained detailed information about her job, salary, apartment, and even bank statements. Where did they get those? Bennett doesn't have access to your financial documents, does he? The detective asked. No, I mean, he saw an income statement at my house, but nothing more. That means they have connections in banks, a serious organization. Jasper pulled out another document. Here is the structure of their group. Bennett and Margaret are the executives. Theodore Whitmore is the mind master. There are also helpers, a bank employee, a notary, a clerk at City Hall, an entire criminal enterprise, essentially. Yes, but the most interesting part is their plans for the near future. He showed her a calendar with notes. After the wedding, they plan a honeymoon, during which they'll administer the drugs, then the staging of a mental breakdown, the ambulance call, hospitalization, and then the declaration of incompetence, divorce, and sale of the apartment. Standard scheme. The money is divided among the group members. Scarlett clenched her fists. Bastards. And the women are kept in the hospital according to the paperwork? Yes, they are regularly fed drugs that maintain the symptoms of the illness. Recovery is not intended. This is murder. Slow, but murder. I agree. That's why we have to act decisively. You have all the evidence. The detective put the documents back into the folder. The question is, how do we use it? Scarlett looked at her watch. There were 4.5 hours left until the wedding. We can cancel the ceremony and go to the police, Jasper suggested. No, she said firmly. If we scare them now, they'll destroy all the evidence and disappear, and their victims will remain in the mental institution. Then what do you propose? We play it out to the end. Let them think everything is going according to plan, and then we'll give them a surprise right at the city hall. The detective shook his head thoughtfully. Risky. What if they suspect something and try to flee? They won't suspect anything. I'm an excellent actress when I need to be. Okay, then I'll need time to prepare everything for the grand reveal. How much? A couple of hours. I need to contact law enforcement, prepare documents. You'll manage. I will.
They shook hands, and Scarlett headed home. The hardest part was ahead, spending the remaining time with the scammers, pretending she knew nothing. Back at the apartment, Scarlett was greeted by a radiant Bennett with a bouquet of peonies. "How are things, gorgeous?" He kissed her cheek. "Stunning hairstyle." "Thank you," Scarlett smiled, trying to look natural. "How was the trip for the cake?" "Excellent. The cake is truly a work of art. Mom is thrilled. And we picked up the champagne and flowers." "Where is Margaret now?" "At her place, getting ready. She's so nervous about today. She says she'll finally have a real daughter." If only she knew what kind of daughter I've prepared for them. "Bennett, can I lie down for a little while? I'm tired after the salons. I want to build up my strength before the ceremony." "Of course, darling. Rest up. I'll take the documents out to the car in the meantime so I don't forget them." Scarlett went into the bedroom and lay down on the bed. She needed to think through the final details of the plan. The main thing was not to give herself away prematurely. The scammers mustn't suspect anything until the very moment of the exposure. Her wedding dress hung in the closet, beautiful, expensive, bought with her own money that the scammers planned to steal. She hadn't bought the shoes in the end, but she found a suitable pair in her own closet. Bennett moved around the apartment, checking the guest list, calling the caterer. "Scarlett, Mom is asking if she needs to bring her camera." "Why? We have a professional photographer." "She wants to take some family photos for the home archive." "For the scammer's archive, more like." "Tell her to bring it if she wants," Scarlett replied, indifferently.
At the appointed time, the wedding motorcade arrived, cars decorated with flowers. The driver helped Scarlett carefully get into the car so as not to wrinkle the dress. "You look absolutely divine, Scarlett," said Bennett, sitting next to her. "I am the happiest man in the world." "Me too," she replied, wondering how many times he had said those exact words to his previous wives. On the way to City Hall, Bennett held her hand and talked about their honeymoon plans. Scarlett nodded and smiled, but her thoughts were preoccupied with something completely different. She wondered if the detective had managed to prepare everything needed for the exposure. At the City Hall building, Margaret was waiting for them in a new blue dress. She looked solemn and even emotional. "My dear girl," her mother-in-law hugged Scarlett. "You look so beautiful, like a real princess." "Thank you," Scarlett returned the embrace, feeling revulsion. "Where are the other guests?" Bennett asked. "They're inside, waiting," Margaret replied. "Uncle Robert is here. Your friends, too." They went up the wide staircase to the ceremonial hall. It was a beautiful, high-ceilinged space decorated with flowers and ribbons. The guests, about 15 people, were already waiting. Scarlett recognized several of Bennett's friends and an older man who was apparently the uncle, but her attention was drawn to another person, a middle-aged man in a dark suit sitting in a far corner. Jasper. The detective had arrived. It meant everything was ready. "Bennett, who is that man by the window?" she asked in a low voice, pretending not to know the detective. "Which one?" He glanced in the indicated direction. "I don't know. Probably an acquaintance of someone. Mom, did you invite anyone else?" "No, only those we agreed on," Margaret replied, also looking at the stranger. "It's nothing," Scarlett said. "Maybe he's a City Hall representative or a photographer." The solemn ceremony soon began. The county clerk in a beautiful suit delivered a welcoming speech. She spoke about the importance of family ties. "And now let us ask the young couple if they are ready to unite their destinies in the bonds of marriage. Bennett Ashford, do you take Scarlett Reynolds to be your lawful wedded wife?" "I do," the groom replied firmly. "Scarlett Reynolds, do you take Bennett Ashford to be your lawful wedded husband?" Silence fell. All the guests waited motionless. Margaret was smiling, savoring the success of the months-long plan. "No," Scarlett pronounced clearly. A deathly silence enveloped the hall. Then its eyes went wide. "What?" he repeated. "Scarlett, did you misunderstand something?" "I understood everything perfectly, and my answer is no, I do not." The county clerk confusedly shifted her gaze from the bride to the groom. "Perhaps nerves. We'll take a short break."
"No break." Scarlett turned to the guests. "I have something to tell everyone present." Bennett tried to take her hand. "Scarlett, stop this nonsense. Don't touch me," she said sharply. "Keep your hands off me, you fraud." A murmur of surprise spread through the hall. Margaret turned pale. "What are you talking about?" Bennett tried to remain calm. "I know all about your plans." Scarlett pulled her cell phone out of her purse. "About how you plan to lock me up in a mental institution and sell my apartment? Are you crazy?" Bennett lunged forward. "Crazy?" Scarlett started the recording on her phone. Margaret's familiar voice came out of the speaker. "You're sure she won't figure it out? My son and I just need her apartment and her money and her to the funny farm, just like we agreed." The mother-in-law clutched her chest. Bennett fidgeted, looking for a way out of the situation. This is some mistake," he muttered. "The recording is doctored." "A mistake?" Scarlett laughed. "And what about Audrey Patterson and Eleanor Vance, your former wives who are now rotting in a mental institution thanks to you?" Now the guests began to look genuinely alarmed. Someone stood up, someone pulled out their phone. "I don't know what you're talking about," Bennett tried to bluff. "You don't know?" Jasper stood up and walked toward the couple. "And what about these documents?" The detective pulled out the folder with the papers found in the Ashfords' apartment. Detailed plans of all their operations, schemes for poisoning victims, and lists of accomplices. Bennett and his mother exchanged glances. Margaret turned toward the exit, but two men in plain clothes blocked her path. "Police," one of them showed his badge. "You're not going anywhere." "And where's the mastermind? Where's Dr. Theodore Whitmore?"
As if on cue, several more police officers entered the hall, escorting an elderly man in glasses. Scarlett recognized him from the hospital's website photo. "The doctor has arrived too," she said with satisfaction. "Now the company is complete." Bennett tried to push his way to the exit, but was immediately restrained. Margaret was crying, muttering something about not understanding. Citizen Ashford and Citizen Whitmore are arrested on suspicion of fraud, falsification of documents, and illegal deprivation of liberty, announced the senior officer. The guests at City Hall were filming the events with their phones. The county clerk stood by confused, not knowing what to do in such a situation. "Scarlett," Bennett rasped as he was led away in handcuffs, "you'll regret this." "No," she replied calmly, "only you will regret what you did to your victims." When the scammers were gone, the hall grew quieter. The guests gradually dispersed, discussing the incredible ending to the wedding event. Jasper approached Scarlett. "Excellent work," he said. "You are a true fighter. Thank you for your help. I couldn't have done it without you. What are you planning to do now?" Scarlett looked at her wedding dress, then at the wedding rings lying at the registrar's table. "First, I'm going to change," she smiled, "and then I'm going to live life forward, the real life." The next morning, Scarlett woke up in her bed with the feeling that the previous day had been a crazy dream, but the empty box of the wedding dress in the corner of the room reminded her of the reality of what had happened. At 9 a.m., Jasper called her. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Normal," Scarlett replied, stretching. "Even good. For the first time in many months, I'm sleeping peacefully." "I understand. I have news on the case. Can you come to the office in a couple of hours?" "Of course. Is it something important?" "Very important. Details came to light during the interrogations that will interest you." Scarlett quickly got ready, and within an hour, she was at the detective's office. Jasper greeted her with several folders of documents. "The overnight interrogations yielded a wealth of material," he began, seating her in the chair. "Bennett Ashford and his mother decided to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a reduction in their sentences." "And what did they say?" "A lot. It turns out their group has been operating for over 7 years. There weren't 2 victims, but 5. 5 women?" Scarlett exclaimed. "Unfortunately, yes. The first 3 operations were conducted in other cities, which is why we didn't discover them immediately." The detective opened the first folder. Here is the timeline of their activity. They started in Charleston, South Carolina. The victim, Audrey Patterson, owner of a 1-bedroom apartment. Margaret was a nurse at the local hospital. She met the psychiatrist Whitmore at a medical conference. He was just developing the scam scheme. Scarlett leafed through the documents. Photos of women, hospitalization certificates, apartment sale documents. So Whitmore is the mastermind. Exactly. The others are executives, though the Ashfords received the lion's share from the real estate sales. And what about the women? Are they all alive? The first 2 victims died in the hospital from drug overdoses. Officially, they committed suicide due to mental illness. Scarlett gasped. They killed them, essentially. Yes, Whitmore gave them massive doses of psychotropic substances, and the other 3, Audrey Patterson and Eleanor Vance, are alive. They're in the county psychiatric hospital. The 5th victim, Clara Donovan from Savannah, Georgia, was taken to a local clinic, but the trail went cold. Jasper pulled out another document. Most importantly, Whitmore's statement. It details the whole system. He named all the accomplices. There are many, a whole network. A notary who helped formalize the powers of attorney, a bank employee who provided information about the victims' accounts, a city hall clerk who rushed the marriages, and even a real estate agent who sold the victims' apartments. Bennett and his mother shook their heads, unable to believe the scale of the criminal activity. And what will happen to them now? Arrested. A criminal case has been initiated under several articles: large-scale fraud, illegal deprivation of liberty, and inducing suicide, and all of this by an organized group of people. And can the surviving women be helped? They're already working on it. Audrey Patterson and Eleanor Vance have been assigned independent doctors.
They will undergo detoxification from the psychotropic drugs, and there are chances for recovery. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. If their psyche hasn't suffered too much damage, recovery is possible. It will take a long time, of course. Scarlett considered this. And can their apartments be returned? Difficult. Formally, they was sold by power of attorney, but considering the circumstances of the case, the court can deem the transactions invalid. How long will that take? Years, the detective answered honestly. Our justice system isn't known for its speed. Scarlett stood up and walked over to the window. Outside, it was a beautiful spring day. People were hurrying about their business, unaware that such monsters could live nearby. Jasper, can I meet those women? Why? I want to make sure they'll be okay, and to apologize. Apologize for what? You're a victim like them. I was going to be a victim, but they are the true victims, and if it weren't for the accidental conversation I overheard, I would be the third. The detective nodded with understanding. All right, I'll arrange it with the doctors, but a meeting is only possible in a few days when their condition stabilizes. Thank you. There's one more thing. Yes? The investigation needs you to give detailed testimony. You need to document every detail of your relationship with the Ashfords. Of course. When? Tomorrow at 10 in the morning. And also, the detective hesitated. You'll need psychological help. What you went through doesn't happen without leaving a mark. Scarlett smiled. You know, I feel great. For the first time in half a year, I know my life belongs only to me. Still, think about it. Trust in people is difficult to restore after stories like this. That evening, Scarlett sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea, reviewing the events of the past few days. Her phone was constantly ringing with calls from journalists. The story of the wedding day exposé had already made the news. She answered only the most important calls. A friend from work called. Scarlett, I saw the news. Is it true your fiancé turned out to be a scammer? My God, and I was wondering why you've been so withdrawn lately. I thought it was pre-wedding stress. Not stress, intuition. Apparently, something was constantly warning me, but I couldn't figure out what exactly. And how did you find out everything? Scarlett recounted the story of the overheard conversation. Her friend gasped and screamed, unbelieving what she was hearing. You're a hero. Can you imagine what could have happened to you? And how many more women that criminal could have deceived? Listen, can I ask you something, friend? Of course, anything. If you hear any gossip at work, tell people that I don't want to discuss this topic. I need time to process everything that happened. Of course, I understand. After the conversation with her friend, Scarlett turned off her phone and went to sleep. Tomorrow, she had to give a statement, and the day after, the meeting with the scammer's victims. The county psychiatric hospital was located on the outskirts of Atlanta in an old brick building surrounded by a tall fence. Scarlett arrived there accompanied by Jasper and the new department head, Dr. Mitchell, who had replaced the arrested Whitmore. I want to warn you, the doctor said, leading them down the long corridor, that the patient's condition is still unstable. We've started the detoxification process, but their psyches have been severely affected. Do they understand what's happening? Audrey Patterson has more lucid moments. Eleanor Vance still reacts weakly, but there is positive momentum. They stopped at a door with a plaque, Room 15. Let's start with Audrey. Just please don't tire her out. The doctor knocked and opened the door. In the small, bright room, a thin woman in her 30s with short, dark hair was sitting on the bed. Seeing the visitors, she cautiously pressed herself against the wall. Audrey, you have visitors, the doctor said gently. This is the young lady I told you about. The woman looked intently at Scarlett. You're the one who exposed them? She asked in a low voice. Yes, my name is Scarlett. I wanted to meet you. And I'm Audrey. The woman relaxed a little. Dr. Mitchell says you were also on the verge of becoming a victim of those animals. Unfortunately, yes. If it weren't for that chance encounter, I would be lying in the next room right now. Audrey nodded. You know, for a long time, I thought I was going crazy. When the hallucinations started, the memory gaps, Bennett was so convincing that I needed help. I can only imagine that feeling, when the whole world seems unreal. And then they brought me here. Whitmore said I was dangerous to others, that I had progressive schizophrenia. How long have you been here? 4 years. Audrey looked out the window. 4 years of my life those bastards stole. Scarlett felt her heart contract. Audrey, do you have any relatives, friends? I did, but after the hospitalization, Bennett told everyone I was incurably ill. People gradually stopped visiting. And my apartment, she smiled bitterly, sold. My husband got the power of attorney and I was declared incompetent. But now everything will change, Scarlett said firmly. The transactions will be ruled invalid and your rights will be restored. Do you really believe that? I don't just believe it, I know it. I have good connections with lawyers. We will achieve justice. Audrey cried for the first time in many years, with joy, not despair. Thank you, she whispered. If it weren't for you, don't thank me. Just get well and prepare for a new life. Next was Eleanor Vance. Her condition was more severe. The woman hardly reacted to what was happening. She stared blankly ahead. Eleanor, you have visitors, Dr. Mitchell said cautiously. The patient slowly turned her head. There was no recognition in her eyes. Can you hear me? Scarlett asked. She hears you, but she can't react appropriately yet. Whitmore gave her very strong medication. Recovery will take longer. Scarlett moved closer and took Eleanor's hand. Eleanor, my name is Scarlett. I came to tell you that the nightmare is over. Bennett is arrested. Whitmore is also behind bars. The woman blinked, and for a second, understanding flickered in her eyes. Bennett? Yes, Bennett Ashford. He won't hurt you anymore. Eleanor squeezed Scarlett's hand and cried silently, bitterly, releasing the pain of many years. Leaving the hospital, Scarlett felt devastated. Hard? Jasper asked. Very, to see what they turned those women into. But now they have a chance at a normal life. What's normal? Years of treatment, lawsuits to get their apartments back, restoring documents. But it's better than a slow death in a mental institution. The detective was right. As difficult as the challenges ahead were, Audrey and Eleanor had hope. Jasper, what about Clara from Savannah? The Savannah police will handle her search. I passed all the materials on to them. If she is also alive, then she too will have a chance for freedom. That night, Scarlett spent a long time at the computer, studying information about the rights of psychiatric patients, procedures for restoring legal competency, and the return of illegally alienated property. She made a decision. She would not stand aside from the fate of the women harmed by the scammers. Tomorrow, she would find a good lawyer and begin the fight for their rights. A week after the exposé, Scarlett sat in the office of one of the best law firms in the city. The attorney, Patricia Wright, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and piercing eyes, was carefully studying the case documents. The case is indeed scandalous, she said, pushing the folders aside. But legally, everything is very complicated. In what sense? Scarlett asked. Formally, the apartment sale transactions were legally executed, powers of attorney were notarized, and court decisions on the declaration of incompetence are also in effect. But that all was done through fraud. Proving that in court will be difficult. We need witness testimonies, medical findings, and documentary confirmation of coercion. And the statements of the scammers themselves won't be enough. They will help, but they can be challenged. They'll say the confessions were made under pressure or in exchange for a reduction in sentence. Scarlett thought about this. But something can be done, of course. First, we file petitions to restore the victim's legal competency. That is realistic considering the new medical findings. And second, in parallel, we prepare lawsuits to invalidate the transactions. But this is a long process, 1 to 3 years. And will the women be homeless all that time? Not necessarily. We can file a request for an injunction to prevent the alienation of the contested property. Then the apartments cannot be sold until the court decision. Good. Let's start. Scarlett, are you sure you want to take on this responsibility? Lawsuits are expensive and stressful. I'm sure. I have savings and I'm ready to spend them on a just cause. Patricia Wright nodded in approval.
Then we begin. But be warned, the apartment buyers will certainly fight back. They acquired the properties on legal grounds. And what are the consequences for them?
In the best case, they return the apartments with compensation for their costs. In the worst case, their transactions are ruled invalid without compensation. Fair enough. You can't profit from someone else's pain. After the meeting with the lawyer, Scarlett went to the hospital to visit Audrey and Eleanor. In 1 week, their condition had noticeably improved. "Scarlett," Audrey beamed. "How are things? What about the lawsuit?" "I've found an excellent lawyer. We're starting the process to restore your rights. It will be long, maybe, but we will achieve justice, I promise." Olivia also looked better. Recognition had appeared in her eyes, although she still spoke little. "Eleanor, do you remember anything from the time you lived with Bennett?" Scarlett asked gently. "I remember," the woman replied softly. "He gave me some pills, said they were vitamins." "What else do you remember?" "How they brought me here. I screamed that I was healthy, but no one listened." "Those are important statements. The lawyer will definitely document them." "Why are you doing this?" Audrey asked unexpectedly. "Why are you spending your time and money on strangers?" Scarlett thought about her answer. "You know, I was alone my whole life, in foster care, then in my apartment, and half a year ago I thought I had found a family. It turned out to be a deception, and now I understand what true family is. People who support each other in difficult times." Audrey smiled. "Does that mean we're your family now?" "If you don't object." "Of course we don't object." Audrey took her hand. "Thank you, little sister." That evening, Scarlett received a call from Jasper. "I have news about the victim from Savannah." "Yes?" "Clara Donovan is alive. She's in the local psychiatric clinic." "In what condition?" "Better than Audrey and Eleanor. Apparently, they kept her on medication for less time." "And what about her apartment?" "Sold, but the buyer is a shell company linked to Whitmore's group, so getting the property back will be easier." "Excellent. Be sure to pass our lawyer's contact information to your colleagues in Savannah." "And another piece of news. Bennett Ashford is asking to meet with you." "Why?" "He says he wants to apologize and share details that will help with the trial." Scarlett hesitated. "All right, but only in the presence of the lawyer and under recording." "Agreed. I'll set it up for tomorrow." The detention center made a crushing impression on Scarlett. Gray walls, barred windows, stern guards. She passed through several checkpoints, surrendering her phone and purse. In the meeting room, Attorney Wright and the case investigator were already seated. A few minutes later, Bennett was brought in. The ex-fiancé had changed greatly. The former confidence was gone. His expensive suit was replaced by a prison uniform. He looked haggard and worn. "Hello, Scarlett," he said in a low voice, sitting across from her. "Hello," she replied dryly. "Thank you for agreeing to come. Speak. Why did you call?" "Time is short." Bennett rubbed his face with his hands. "I want to apologize for everything I planned to do to you. Not just to me, to 5 women. Yes, them too." He lowered his eyes. "You know, I didn't become like this right away. The first time, Mom convinced me. She said she needed a lot of money for her treatment." "What treatment?" "She had cancer. The operation cost a huge amount of money that we didn't have." The lawyer wrote every word. "And for your mother, you decided to deceive helpless women?" "The first time, it seemed like an exception. We thought, okay, we'll fool one, cure Mom, and never again. But you didn't stop at one." "We didn't stop." He shook his head. "The money ran out quickly, and then Whitmore suggested repeating the scheme. And you agreed." "I'm weak, Scarlett. I got used to easy money, the beautiful life, and Mom pushed me. She said rich women wouldn't miss a thing." "Wouldn't miss a thing?" Scarlett's voice became hard. "Audrey Patterson lost 4 years of her life. Eleanor Vance almost lost her mind." "I know," Bennett cried. "I'm a monster, but I want to atone for my guilt." "How?"
I'll tell you everything I know about the schemes, the accomplices, the hidden money. The investigator leaned forward. What hidden money? We didn't split all the funds. I set some aside for a rainy day. I have a secret bank account. How much is in there? By my calculations, about $6 million. The lawyer and the investigator exchanged glances. And there's also real estate. Whitmore bought apartments in the name of shell companies, 2 in our city, 1 in Savannah. This can be proven. I have copies of the documents. I hid them in case the doctor decided to cheat us. Where are the documents? In a safe deposit box. I can give you the key and a power of attorney to retrieve them. The investigator nodded. This will substantially help the case. And regarding the victims, I'm ready to testify against Whitmore. I'll tell you how he selected the drugs, how he simulated the symptoms of the illness. Scarlett listened and thought that even such criminals can be capable of repentance. Too late. It only comes when it's already too late to change anything. Bennett, what about your mother? He smiled bitterly. She still thinks we didn't do anything wrong. She says we were just redistributing wealth in favor of the needy, so she feels no remorse. No. And that's the most terrible thing. At least I understand what we did, but she sincerely believes in the justice of our actions. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Bennett told everything he knew about the criminal group, named the accomplices, and indicated the locations of the documents and money. "Why are you doing this?" Scarlett asked at the end.
I want to atone for my guilt somehow. He looked her in the eyes. And also, maybe it sounds ridiculous to you, but I truly fell in love with you. You fell in love during the courtship? At first, it was just a role, and then you turned out not to be like the previous victims. How to be strong, independent. I wanted to be a better man with you. It's too late to think about that, Scarlett replied coldly. I know, but I wanted you to know the truth. Leaving the detention center, Scarlett felt a strange mixture of pity and disgust. Bennett was genuinely repentant, but that couldn't excuse what he had done. His statements will help the case greatly, the lawyer said. With such evidence, the court will surely side with the injured parties. What sentence will he get? Around 10 years, no less. With his cooperation with the investigation, they might give him 8. Too little, Scarlett said grimly. But the victims will receive compensation and get their apartments back. This was the main thing. Justice would be done, and the women harmed by the scammers would begin a new life. Half a year later, Scarlett was sitting in a cafe drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. An article about the conclusion of the notorious trial was on the front page. Ring of Scammers Gets Its Due, the headline read. Bennett Ashford, 8 years in a high-security facility. Margaret Ashford, 7 years. Dr. Theodore Whitmore, 12 years as the group's organizer. The other accomplices received between 3 and 5 years. Most importantly, all the injured women were declared legally competent, and the transactions for the sale of their apartments were ruled invalid. Audrey Patterson and Eleanor Vance returned to their homes. Clara Donovan from Savannah also got her property back. In half a year, Scarlett's life had changed dramatically. She quit the construction firm and founded a nonprofit organization to help victims of fraud. The office was located in a small space downtown, but there was plenty of work. Scarlett, you have a visitor, the secretary announced. Jasper entered the office with a bouquet of wildflowers. Congratulations on the successful conclusion of the case, he said, handing her the flowers. Thank you. She put them in a vase. Although this isn't the conclusion, but only the beginning. What do you mean? 15 people have already contacted us with similar stories. Apparently, there are more of these scammers than we thought. And what do you plan to do? Help people. Create a group of lawyers and detectives who specialize in these cases. Jasper smiled. I was going to suggest collaboration, but I see you beat me to it. I'm always happy to work with professionals. Then consider me accepted onto the team. Excellent. And now, tell me, how are our protégés doing? Audrey Patterson has fully recovered. She's back at work. She plans to get a law degree through a correspondence course. Perfect. And Eleanor? With her, it's more complicated. The psychological wounds are still there, but she's also improving. And Clara Donovan from Savannah? She's a brave one. She opened a beauty salon. Business is going well. Scarlett nodded with satisfaction. It means our mission was accomplished. What mission? To give those women back their faith in justice and a normal life. That evening, Scarlett walked along the waterfront promenade, enjoying the warm summer air. A young couple was sitting on a bench, holding hands. The girl was wearing a white dress, the boy a light suit. Newlyweds, apparently. Scarlett smiled, remembering her own failed wedding. At the time, she felt like life was over, that she could never trust anyone again. Now she understood. Everything had happened for the best. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Scarlett, it's Audrey." "Hello, how's things?" "Great. I wanted to tell you some news. I enrolled in law school." "Congratulations." "A correspondence course, yes?" "I decided to get an education. I want to defend the rights of victims like us." "That's wonderful. We'll be colleagues." "And I also have a boyfriend," Audrey confessed shyly. "Really? Tell me." "We met at the courthouse. He also suffered from scammers, just a different kind. He's a really good, honest person." "And what about marriage?" "Seriously? For now, we're just dating, but he talks about getting married." "And how do you feel about that?" "Strange, but I'm not afraid anymore. After what we went through, I learned to distinguish truth from lies." After the conversation with Audrey, Scarlett felt that the day had not been wasted. The women she had saved were not only recovering physically, but finding the strength for new relationships and new plans. And what about herself? Half a year ago, Scarlett felt that love was just a mask for mercenary purposes. But gradually, she understood. There are different kinds of people. Some use feelings for profit, others give them sincerely. At home, a bouquet of wildflowers without a card was waiting on the doorknob of her apartment. Such bouquets had been appearing for a month. Always on Friday, always different flowers, and always without a note. Scarlett smiled. She apparently had a secret admirer. She wondered who it was, and more importantly, was it worth opening her heart to new feelings? Outside, the lights of the night city turned on. Somewhere out there lived people who might need help tomorrow, and they would receive it because there were those who were ready to fight for justice. Scarlett picked up the bouquet and put it in water. Perhaps it was time to start a new chapter in her life, a chapter that would be written not by deceit and greed, but sincere feelings and mutual trust. In 1 week, the mystery of the bouquets solved itself. Jasper came into the office with another bunch of wildflowers in his hand. "It's you," Scarlett was surprised. "Me," the detective confessed sheepishly. "I wanted to get to know you as a person first." "And what's the conclusion?" "You are an amazing woman, strong, fair, willing to help people." "And what's next?" "And next, I wanted to know if you'd agree to have dinner with me. Not for work, just a date." Scarlett considered it. Half a year ago, she would surely have refused. The memories of the betrayal are too strong. "Now, I accept," she smiled, "but on one condition." "Which one?" "No bouquets without a card. If you want to give flowers, do it openly." "Agreed," Jasper laughed. Their first date took place at a small family-owned restaurant. They talked about everything: work, plans, dreams. Jasper proved to be an interesting conversationalist with a good sense of humor. "Scarlett, can I ask a personal question?" he asked during dessert. "Go ahead." "Aren't you afraid to trust a man again?" "I was afraid," she answered honestly, "but I realized one thing: you can't close yourself off from everyone because of one scoundrel." Wise words. Besides, now I know how to recognize a lie. It's a kind of immunity against con artists. "And do I meet your standards for now?" "Yes," she smiled, "but I'll be keeping an eye on you." In 1 month, their relationship became serious. Jasper didn't rush things, didn't demand immediate decisions. He was simply there, reliable, honest, and understanding. "Do you know what I find most attractive about you?" he said one night as they walked in the park. "What?" "That you turned your pain into strength. You started helping others. You didn't close yourself off." "And I'm attracted to you because you don't try to save me," Scarlett replied. "You understand that I'm already strong enough. That's exactly why we complement each other." Meanwhile, her organization grew and developed. By the end of the year, they had helped 27 victims of fraud. They conducted 8 trials. They returned property worth over $35 million to people. Audrey Patterson was successfully studying at law school and planned to join Scarlett's team after graduation. Eleanor Vance opened a small flower shop and was doing wonderfully. Clara Donovan from Savannah expanded her business. On New Year's Eve, Scarlett received a letter from Bennett Ashford's detention center. Scarlett, I don't know if you'll read this letter, but I wanted to say I heard about your organization, about how you're helping people. I feel proud that I once knew you, even under such circumstances. I'm serving my sentence and thinking a lot about life, about how everything could have changed if I had been stronger. But the past cannot be corrected. One can only try to atone for guilt. I want you to know everything I said in the interrogatories is true, and if any more statements are ever needed, I'm ready to give them. And I also want to say thank you for stopping us. If it weren't for you, we would continue to destroy the lives of innocent people. I wish you happiness, the true happiness you deserve. Scarlett reread the letter 2 times, then folded it and put it in her desk. The past truly could not be changed, but a better future could be built. On December 31st, Jasper proposed to her. It wasn't pompous or theatrical. It was simply at home, at the festive table. "Scarlett, marry me," he said, offering a simple gold ring. "And what if I say no?" she joked. "Then I'll wait until you say yes." "And how long are you willing to wait?" "My whole life, if necessary." Scarlett took the ring and put it on. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding took place in the spring, at the same city hall where she had exposed the scammers. But now everything was different, sincere, honest, with true love. There were few guests, colleagues, friends, Audrey, Eleanor, Clara, who came from Savannah, all those who constituted her new family, not of blood, but of spirit. "Scarlett Reynolds, do you take Jasper Cole to be your lawful wedded husband?" the county clerk asked. "I do," the bride replied firmly, and in that word sounded all her confidence in the future. After the ceremony, when the guests dispersed, the newlyweds were left alone on the waterfront promenade where Scarlett had once pondered her fate. "And what will this story be?" Jasper asked. "A happy one," she smiled, "absolutely happy." And somewhere in this city lived people who might need help tomorrow, and they would receive it because there were those who were ready to fight for justice. Scarlett West took her husband's hand tightly and looked to the future without fear. Her game of cat and mouse had ended in victory, not only over the scammers, but over her own fears and loneliness. And ahead of her was a whole life full of true feelings, important matters, and sincere relationships. The life she had earned.